We're
Hey,
gonna try to figure this out together.
hi. How's it
Okay.
going?
Oh, it's been quite a day already.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good, good, good. Just also reading through all social media. A lot of controversy here in El Paso yesterday. So about this protest. So just keeping up with it, I guess. That's kind of what I've been up to. See,
Um,
so yeah. You enjoying your Sunday though?
yes, it
Yes.
was not the Sunday I imagined, but it is the Sunday that I got, and this is. I mean, I've been looking, as you know, I've been looking forward to this, um, and I'm not social media savvy, and so I am sure my phone is going to fall, and the dog's going to start barking, and something will
No,
will
that's fine.
happen.
That's fine. I had invested in a little tripod, a phone tripod, so I really recommend them. They really help. Especially now that everything's through social media, like I think it was a good purchase. It was a good investment. So everybody's watching a little iPhone tripod or self tripod. Cool. So, well, thank you for meeting with me, here on Instagram, and I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have today, and how the times are turning here in El Paso. So, I don't know if you just want to go ahead and get right into it, or how you want to do it, or or if you want to introduce yourself, real quickly, as mayoral candidate.
Yes, yes, and I want to talk about this particular conversation with you. Um, so, as you know, I am running for mayor of the city of El Paso. If I win, which I have every intention of doing, I
Which
will
you
be the
will.
we have to win. I
We have,
will be the first Chicana mayor of one of the top 20 cities in the country.
did y'all hear
And
that? First Chicana mayor in one of the top 20 cities. Listen to that. We're making history here.
we always think of El Paso as being small, and we are number 19 in terms of size.
Hmm.
And so we are really a big city.
Hmm.
And also, I'm not the first Chicana to run in El Paso, but I would be the first Chicana to win in the city. In our own it's part of our own history, which I
Right.
think is speaks volumes of where we are right now in the context of all of this pain regarding the pandemic and regarding um, you know um, all the Black lives that are being lost and tortured every single day. I think that we need to understand that history. We need to understand the why behind all of that. And so when you and I talked about doing this event, it was part of the conversations with Vero. And you're the first one that we're
Oh.
having, which is awesome.
Hey.
Because I'm a lawyer, and for a long time I thought that good lawyers were the ones that talked the best and the loudest, and it's not true. I've learned from watching the best, from being in practice for so long, that the best lawyers are the ones who listen.
Yep.
They listen to the things that are said and the things that are not said, and then they take action. Then um, they conform their messaging and their understanding of the issues to what is around them. And
Hmm.
so I think with leadership, elected leadership, it should be no different, right? We should be
Absolutely.
listening to people.
Yeah.
And so I have a ton of ideas based on what I've seen in the community, but the experts are people like you, because you're in it. You're trying to survive. You know what I mean? You've seen it all. You have gone away, come back. You're doing all of these cool things. And so I need to know how we don't lose you and how we can learn from what you're doing to build on it, you
Okay.
know? So that's the
Thank you.
that's the key to anyone else who wants to be a part of these conversations.
Hmm.
That's what the point is. The point is not to pander. It's not to like
Hmm.
shoot the
No,
shit. It's
no,
really to like I want to learn. I
no,
want to learn and I
absolutely.
have to learn.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's interesting that you say that just because I've mentioned this person to you before. It was Lisa Calderon, who ran for mayor of Denver, and I had the pleasure of working with Lisa when I lived in Denver. She was overseeing the nonprofit that I worked at. And ultimately, she didn't win, but I've always, like even when living here, in El Paso, and still like, trying to rally my friends in Denver to like help her out, because I see the importance of um, bringing women of color into leadership positions. I think that's really the only way that this country is going to change. That's my opinion, So, but I mean, so um, hands down, and I've I've been able to get to know you through the stuff that happens in Duranguito, and it's been very refreshing to see that there's other people who kind of ride the same kind of wavelength as you, and to like, oh, okay, like, because it's an interesting city, El Paso's an interesting place, politically speaking, and where people kind of stand on politics. And I know that we did the video together, or you helped me with the video for Tacoma Community College, and you had said something about El Pasoans, that the way they have digested political information. I guess you made reference to that, and how we need to offer it in a way that maybe is a little bit more accessible, and in a way that's a little more that drives it closer to home. I think that's the message I took away from it anyway. So so cool. But yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see your campaign, like super excited to see where it goes. And I'm excited to be part of that history. That's the honest truth. Like I definitely want to say I contributed to the first El Paso Chicana mayor's campaign. That would be an honor. Fronteriza, all that good stuff.
For sure. And on that note, I don't want people to think that this is only about gender politics.
No.
As you know,
Mm-hmm.
I grew up crossing the border every day. I was a U.S. citizen. My mom is too. But, she was going to these low-wage jobs. I was going to public school, which was illegal, right? I could not be a Juarez resident and use public school. So I understood that. And, having to justify your existence in a space every day does something to you. And we were doing that to people in uniform, mostly men. And I saw men who were white, black, brown, Asian, because customs tends to attract a lot of diverse personnel and import a lot of people, especially back then in the 80s. And so I learned at the age of 6 that I could not assume that a person who was black was going to be nice to my mom. A person who was brown was going to be nice. Like, it just varied. Some were nice, some were jerks, and it ran across the board. And so I feel that way with politics. And we see it now that people of color do have access to education and politics, that sometimes you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders because even though he's a white, older man of a different generation, he speaks truth.
All of it.
All of it, right? He's talking about corporate socialism. He's talking about all of these things that I know are the problem. And other people who are maybe people of color who are running are not, and they haven't devoted their life to it. So I also feel like, yes, I am a Chicana. I'm super proud of it. I'm super proud of making history. But I also want people to question what I've done and to really put that to the test to say, like, did I serve my community? And my community, by that I mean people who are struggling, and it's primarily brown and poor people in El Paso, and to really put that to the test, and not just follow me because I'm a woman of color.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think your trajectory, and as because I think I met you probably I think I met you at the what was it called? The event after the shooting where Ana Tijoux was, it was like the concert over El Paso. What was it? Not the El Paso Firme, right? Yes. That was the first time I met you, was there, and in the last several months since then, just understanding where you're coming from also, like, so don't get me wrong, like, it's not just putting my faith in just because it's a woman of color, but also, like I said, a woman of color who comes from with experience, like, I mean, I have a few friends who are lawyers, and I know that it is in my opinion, like somewhat of a brutal career. It seems really tough, and and the work that you've been able to do with the was it Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid? Um,
Yeah.
that I think that it's amazing, you know, the stuff that you have on your, you know, what you've been able to complete. So, and I think that you're very qualified for for being the mayor of El Paso. You know, absolutely. So,
Let's turn this to you.
okay.
I have some questions for you. Um, we are doing this in separate spaces,
Hmm.
right? Because
Yes.
we're in the same room together without wearing a mask
Yeah.
or socially distancing. So we're in the middle of a pandemic, and in El Paso, it seems that we just have not been able to flatten the curve. So we don't know when that's gonna change. But I know that you and I share a concern that this pandemic has highlighted the inequalities that already exist in our communities,
Absolutely.
right?
Hmm.
And we see that to an extent on a local level because we don't have access to data, but we've seen it certainly across the country that people who are Black, brown, and poor are the ones having to do these essential jobs for the most part at grocery stores, driving, truck driving. All of these things are still exposing them to
Right.
and they're also they tend to be either uninsured or underinsured. Um, and of course, when we have the school shut down and then the library shut down, kids of color are the ones who are going to struggle the most academically, which, as I said, to me was a gateway out of poverty.
Hmm.
Um, in the midst of all this, right, we have the death of Ahmed Aubrey. We have the Amy Cooper using the police force, trying to use the police force as a weapon
Right.
in her favor and against, a black man. And then George Floyd dying the way that he did. It's it's like we can't find a cure for racism. How have you used art during this time, both of the pandemic and then most recently with all of this racial I don't know what else to call it. I mean, it's just like this this sickness.
Right.
How have you used art to get through it? And what do you
Well,
recommend for the rest of us that are struggling with that?
well, I would say that um, on there's kind of very level there's it's like a leveled question, you know, in a sense, because I would say like at a very personal level, like it's been a really big part of my therapy of just existing in the COVID era, you know what I mean? I tend to get really lost in my art sometimes, like I mean like the small details, you know, which I mean a lot of artists don't like to do that, you know, because they say just it doesn't have to be perfect, you know. But I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I'm like, no, that little glimmer in the eye, that's what's gonna make it. It's gonna make it or break it, right? That's how I. So a lot. So when I'm kind of working on art, I tend to just focus on it, and it allows me to kind of shut everything else out, you know. So in that sense, art has been very therapeutic. You know what I mean? Like to just literally just kind of put myself in my little corner and I just go to town and I just keep creating, you know, um, and I think that to answer part of that question too, I think, but like on a career level, like as an artist, you know, I was really privileged to have Tacoma Community College, you know, inquire about, you know, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to during the pandemic and how have you been surviving, you know, and the so that in itself, like if you saw the video that we created, it was a bit of an artistic expression too, right? It wasn't just putting cuts of video together. There was like there was definitely like a focus that we were trying to create, you know, like when we talked about Tonita and we showed the picture that she had let us borrow, you know, the Adelita. And so like, yeah, wasn't that amazing? So, so yeah, you know, so I think that that's also another example of the things that I like, you know, that definitely the message of the video was definitely an artistic expression, you know, like for me it was. So, and really I've never created a video like that, and I want to give the young videographer who helped with the edit. His name is Juan Flores, and you know, he wanted to learn about. So here's another thing I could talk about. You know, is it's that particular experience of getting the video going. also allowed me to put my like educator cap on, because I come from higher ed. That's my professional background, and it allowed me to teach this young man some stuff about Duranguito. He wanted to learn about social justice, and we tried practicing as much as we could, social distancing measures, um, we wore masks most of the time, and but it was really interesting because once we wrapped it up and we got there was some stuff that we're still trying to clean up before we send the final one to so that Tacoma can archive it. Like there was some misspellings and stuff that we're still fixing, but um, when we wrapped it up, generally speaking, like the message of the video, I just turned and looked at him and I said, well, what did you learn? Like, do you feel like you could go talk to somebody um, about Duranguito, about the issues there, and he just kind of looked at me and I think he was a little bit surprised when he said, yeah, I think I can, so that was always trying to use like art and education kind of in the same, you know, activities that I do, I guess you could say, so that's one example, and I think just thinking about like what I've been doing, just generally speaking, as an artist throughout the years is always, using like images of like I could give you an example, I could show you an example, right? Just pull it off my wall if you want to see, right? But I would say that well, here, I'll get it for you. Let me show you. So in regards to like, trying to be an ally to the Black community, I try to honor them with these types of arts, like this stuff like that. And this is a trans woman, and I believe that Black trans lives matter as well, because if we look at the demographics of who's being murdered and, all that kind of stuff, we know that, our trans community are the ones who are the most targeted, so I believe that that's how I can maybe push a conversation was with art sometimes, to open up those doors, so that's pretty much what I guess what I've been up to as an artist in regards to how I'm trying to tackle these issues, of what's happening in our world. It's a crazy place that we live in right now. Yeah. So.
It is. What is your relationship to Tacoma Community College?
What's my relationship over there? Like, how did I establish that? It's interesting. An old high school friend, actually. So my friend Daniel, we went to high school together, and he was this skater kid, like the misunderstood skater kid, and like I was like the shy little, chubby gay kid in the corner, and like we just like started this friendship, and we've been friends since like 1994, I guess, and he he's also an artist, but he started working at this at Tacoma Community College, and they were looking for speakers to come in, and he just showed the committee my work, and they liked it enough to invite me. So I actually gave a talk to their students last October, and then the students invited me back for this video part, so that was really cool. Like that was like such a honor to be like invited back from the students, so so like I enjoy working with young people, and I enjoy working on art. Yeah,
That is that's really awesome. It's really
yeah,
awesome.
thank
You
you.
represent
Yeah.
El Paso, and not only that, but they've asked for you to continue to be a voice,
Yeah.
in a community that doesn't even have any roots there.
Right, none,
And
yeah, at all, yeah. So like it was just so, and I'll tell you, like it's interesting, when you do those types of I have given some student I've led some student groups, as an artist, but this experience was just you know just so different, they have you been to Tacoma? I don't know, like
no,
have
I know
no,
you
so it's
said.
such a different place there, right? Like so I was there for about 3 days, and it was just such a wonderful experience, man. Like I mean, that was career highlight for sure. Just like people engaging in different types of conversations um, and wanting to learn about this area, which was the most important to me. About wanting to learn like cross cultural and cross border, or like they're
Mm-hmm.
like 3 hours away from the Canadian border, and kind of looking at the differences of how people are treated, and so yeah, it was a really great experience. I loved it.
Do you think that the way El Pasoans see ourselves or themselves is, or the way they see El Paso is different from the way the rest of the country sees El Paso,
uh,
especially after events
yes.
happen? I mean, we've seen in the news for some very terrible reasons the
Hmm.
last couple of years,
Hmm.
and we've been used in so many different negative ways
Right.
by
Yeah,
different people.
yeah. I
We've also seen the light coming through. Do you think that's based on your experience, it's different the way people see us
Yeah,
in the blue?
absolutely. I think that well, I've also, when I was working in higher ed, I was working in grant funded programs, which are basically like nonprofits, right? Housed within higher ed. And so part of that work was working within the community, and so I would work with that program. What's it called? I'm sure you've heard of it, where this border servant corps.
Yes.
Yes, so I do think that a lot of people tend to want to study El Paso, or like study like the phenomenons that happen here in the border. That for sure I get almost everywhere I visit. Like, what's it like the, and living in Denver for a couple of years, and people asking about what was life like down here, but I do think that they get a sense that it's like Mexico, like, but I sometimes like we live in villages or something, like, I mean, I think sometimes people might not realize how much of an urban center it is, you know what I mean? Because it really is. I mean, combined with Juarez and Cruces, like we are a big mass of people, Yeah, and I think that is sometimes not realized, about El Paso, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um, did you grow up in El Paso?
I didn't. No, I'm from Alamogordo originally. That's where I was born and raised. My mom is from Juarez though, so I have always seen. So when I moved away, I would miss El Paso, and I would miss Alamogordo, and I would miss Cruces, right? Like, so I've always just kind of seen my home as La Frontera, rather than seeing it like somebody from El Paso, or somebody from Cruces, or somebody from Alamogordo. Like, I just kind of have always envisioned my and parts of Juarez too. Because that's where my abuelita lived. So on the weekends we would go to see her in Juarez. So I grew up going to Wet and Wild, and to to Ascarate Park and all that stuff too. So those are also kind of in my formative years. So I wasn't born and raised here, but I spent a lot of time in El Paso growing up, like a ton. The projects over in the Lower Valley where my aunt lived off of was it North Loop? I can't remember the name of the project complex. They ripped it down, but I spent a lot of my youth there. Yeah. So I'm not no, I'm not from El Paso, but it's very much a part of my home.
How long have you lived in El Paso?
I have lived here for 4 years.
For years. And what brought you back to the region?
Uh, to be honest, I think it was a little bit of a naive. I was being a little bit naive when one part, was so back in 2008, I believe it was. My cousin was kidnapped in Juarez, with the cartel violence and all that kind of that stuff was going on, and I had been doing a lot of research on my own about the feminicidios, right? And by like the grace of God or the goddess or whoever, my cousin was found alive and well, and yeah, he survived, and I think it was just learning about everything that was going on in the border that I wanted to return. You know, I felt like I needed to
Mhm.
go and return to my communities and to
Mhm.
offer some type of assistance, you know. But and so I say when I was a little bit naive, like, "Oh, we're gonna go and you know, I'm gonna go down there and make some change and all this stuff. You know, I was very like, oh, like militant about it. But I think as I've gotten older, I realized that change is well, change comes from within, right? From oneself. So like, you know, when um, well, that's like another subject. But like I'm just saying, like I just wanted to come back and help create some type of community down here. So, which I think I'm doing. It just takes a long time.
It really does. I know there's a protest this afternoon, and I've been to a lot of protests, and I was really thinking about this today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, the word oppression, like it really hit me today. Like, and it's, I mean, it's something I've thought about a lot in the course of my life, but gosh, what it means to be oppressed, right? To be so suppressed, to feel this weight that you feel like, how can we fix it? How can we fix it now? And
Mm-hmm.
and it just seems insurmountable. And I thought about the utility and futility of protesting, and I used to think of it as this way of changing, right? Of opening other people's eyes, of convincing the other side that you're in the right. And I later, I've since realized that when I go to them, it's really to refuel myself. It's really to feel that I'm connected to other people who understand what's at stake and who are feeling the same kind of pain and are trying to just reach out. And it's really what, when we think about protest art, that's really sometimes what it does. It changes you from within,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps you feel less oppressed, and it makes you come out for, you get a chance to come up for air
Mm-hmm.
when you see other people that are in it with you, where you're like, I'm not alone in feeling this and
Mm-hmm.
wanting this change. And I think that's really what I've learned to appreciate from being in those kinds of spaces, especially right now when we are having to physically isolate,
Mm-hmm.
and physically pull ourselves apart, from each other for the sake of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think, yeah, I mean, and so much when we talk about art, sometimes I go to these, I've gone to these protests and I'm like, there's so much art, and we're always, I think, confined to these little spaces, right? You have a sign, you have a poster board, it's tiny, but there's so much that you have to force yourself to say in this micro space,
Mm-hmm.
to convey what's going on in your heart.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I mean, I think that's one of the privileges of being an artist is being able to communicate that, you know, because it is hard when you know, I've lived my life kind of in two ways. One which is always like the worker bee, you know, like the 9 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, this is like you know, literally like the worker bee, and it doesn't always lend itself to creating and to expression, you know, so that can be very suffocating to not be able to like say this is what's on my mind, like, or you know, especially when, like you said, like when we're living in these measures of self-containment and of trying to figure out, well, do I want to go to a protest where I could potentially get sick or get somebody else sick, you know, like, so we're just, you know, and I think that art, like I said, is a good way for me to just plug out away, you know, and to have a protest via my art, you know what I mean? So that's, you know, I think it's an interesting concept because I don't necessarily think of my art as very political in the sense of like I'm not gonna draw Trump cartoons or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, because that is by definition political art. But I think
Mm-hmm.
that for sure my art plays with gender politics and all that kind of stuff, though, for sure. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's a little bit different in that sense. But yeah, absolutely. Like that. Some of that what we're experiencing today is very suffocating. You hit the nail on the head. I feel it for sure.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And um, so you've been involved with Duranguito. And I wanted to talk to you about, as we were thinking about what to call this, art as a form of resistance and as a form of building and strengthening community. Um, I want to back up because I've been involved with Duranguito since the fall of 2016 when the city announced it, right? They had been planning this for administrations leading back to
Yeah.
2006 when the downtown plan was
Yeah.
announced.
Yeah.
But it's true, like the rest of us didn't. We organized around Segundo Barrio because that was the first attack. We didn't think about Duranguito until 2016 when the city finally came through and announced, "Hey, we're making a bid, and the bid is for a basketball arena, and it's going to be in Duranguito." And that's when people were like, "Wait, what a minute, what's going on?" And that was in 2016. And um, I want to tell you, as a legal aid lawyer, it's almost always just our clients and us. It's like we're sometimes the community, our client community is bigger, but it's still like residents, it's still people who are impacted, in the thick of it. And Duranguito just it has changed. It has changed my rootedness in El Paso because it was the first time in my entire life that I saw young people who had no connection to the community rise up, and it just gave me this like hope of like, oh my, this is this El Paso? Like I really felt like I had been transported because they were fighting for viejitos and viejitas that they didn't even know. They were fighting for buildings, for history. They were fighting against corruption, against lack of transparency, and it just has it's given me so much hope in the community's future.
Yeah, no, I agree, just the amount of support that I've been seeing, like even, I mean, I know that the shift in organizing is coming, right? Because of COVID and, all that. Yesterday we had a meeting with the members of Paso del Sur, to talk about some of the stuff that was going on, and we wanted to release a statement, So it's definitely like, organizing
Yeah.
is different, but the beauty of why that even happened though was because a lot of young people were sending messages to the Instagram for Paso del Sur, asking questions
Mm.
about, we don't know who's organizing this event. What do you all think? And so based as an organization, we said we need to release some type of statement because the community is asking for this type of help, But so, and I think a lot of it has to go back to what you said is just that folks really are taking a bigger interest in what's going on in El Paso, and I think they're making connections to the bigger picture that what's happening here in El Paso is symptomatic of what's happening across the U.S. in terms of gentrification, unethical governments, city governments, like, I mean, obviously we live in a government that's very unethical under the Trump administration, in my opinion, and so like, I think you could see those droplets everywhere in different places, so yeah, and I think that there is a generation of younger folks that are very woke in a sense, and they want to make change, and I think that's wonderful, yeah, it would be great, my friend Dulcinea, she's the director of ethnic studies at NMSU, and we've done some workshops together, right? Like on white supremacy and stuff, and we always kind of go back to what is some of the solutions to white supremacy in the country, and I think I don't speak for Dulcinea, but I speak for myself in saying that I think we need to introduce ethnic studies into public schools, that for young, Latinx, Latinas, Latinos, to learn about their history, to learn about their culture or whatever, and so that what their histories, that our histories aren't so whitewashed, I think that's a first step in my opinion, so
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I think um yes to all of that. um, we don't know our history. And I have to say, I mean, sometimes it is a painful journey.
Mm,
It is a painful journey. You know, I get emotional about it because when you really go back and you start looking at these images, and I think like David Romo and Dr. Yolanda Leiva have done such a beautiful job of archiving our history.
mhm,
But you start to see like, oh wait, there was so much diversity going on downtown, you know, and in
mhm,
Segundo, in San Juan, in the Duranguito area. There's
yeah,
so many different people that live together.
right.
I've had the honor of working on unfair housing cases, so that's like housing discrimination cases. And when you really think about these spaces that we've had to forcefully desegregate, our workplaces, our schools, our housing, our neighborhoods, I mean, it, it really, for me, I feel like who would I be if I didn't have friends of different races, different classes, if I didn't have, you know, with my clients, this exchange, multi-generational exchange, multi-neighborhood exchange, like, why would you want to? I mean, I think it's like the best gift that God has given us is diversity and
Mhm,
exposure to different things is what really makes you a more interesting person. And yet some people don't get that. And then to see our police force emulate
mhm,
that narrow-mindedness and hatredness, because you know, as now as a politician, I'm having to look at the city's budget, and the biggest chunk of our budget, right, the thing that we say yes to the impact of other things that we say no to, is our police and our fire departments.
mhm,
They consume, I think it's over 60% of our budget, and so we need to have the absolute most transparent, most effective, most just police force. And what I've seen, you know, as you know, having been involved with Duranguito, you see that they seem to have, not all of them, but there seems to be an okayness with excessive use of force and presence when it comes to people who are just trying to exercise their civil rights. You know, they go to give public comment at city council. They chain themselves to buildings at Duranguito. They're not hurting anyone. They're not even armed, but then they're just seen with such suspicion
right.
and there's so much intimidation where it's like, do you know how hard it is to get people to come out and to like
Right.
sign up for public comment? Like we
Right.
should be applauding it. We should lay
Right.
out the red carpet for anyone who wants to spend all day at City Hall waiting to say their piece, and instead you show up in full force. You're, you know, you're just keeping an eye out. You're ready to arrest anyone and have arrested, like, you know, with Judge Bridges. And so I think like I really want people to start to recognize that that's not, it doesn't serve anyone.
Mhm,
And we're seeing that, you know, there are cities, even a friend was telling me that, you know, you start to see the images of police officers joining protesters and saying like, look, this is not what we signed up for, you
right.
know, that's not
Yeah.
us.
Mhm,
And we want to work with community. And I
right.
think that that's going back to the protest, right? Like, what's the worth of the protest? I think it really has a chance to impact all of the attendants, including the police that are there
Mhm,
to make sure that no one gets out of hand or whatever. I think that if they are truly listening, you have a chance to capture that and
mhm,
to say, let's work together because, you know, we do pay you. You
right.
do work for us.
Right.
Um, and try to change the conversation and the narrative about that. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I also think that the city currently, with in regards to like what's happened within, because I've been with Paso del Sur now for about a year and a half, and what they've done within that year and a half time frame too, like so which like these different forms of resistance, right? Like when we have our mercadito cultural, that's a form of resistance, and you know, but on the other hand, when you're organizing, you never know how the city's going to respond to something, so they know that we're there. They mean the police station's right around the corner, right there on was it Santa Fe, and so they walk by, they see what we're doing, which is, I mean, so I don't know, like they're aware, right? But the next day, the lights are turned off, the street lights are turned off, or they put up more fencing or stuff like that, so it's just like these, I don't know, that's oppressive, it's oppressive to live to have elderly people in dark streets, like basically closed off, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. So we have to look at things in different ways too. That the city really is just, they've been very, in my opinion, just cold-hearted in how they've approached Duranguito. That's my opinion though. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen it with other efforts. Sunrise, when Sunrise was going to city council almost every week to talk about the El Paso Electric merger, or the sale to JP Morgan, it was the same. It was just like, there's it's like they're bothered. They're bothered by us exercising our constitutional rights. But that's what they took the oath to do, is to protect and serve us, and to also defend that constitutional right to petition your government. And I've seen it with Duranguito. I've spoken to, for a while, it was like every Friday at 4 o'clock, I was getting a call when they had, so right after, in September of 2018, we had the siege, right? And the buildings were damaged, and no one was ever charged with anything for trying to break down those buildings. And we had the orders that came in, and all of this stuff happened, right? And so then you had the planton. So people were sacrificing their own safety and their own sleep and watching the buildings in the neighborhood from the sidewalk. And the police were there, I guess, to protect the buildings, but really, I guess, to make sure that, people stayed in line. And it happened 1 week after another. I would be at my office, like, just, okay, this is quiet time. I get to work. I get to close up stuff. And then David would call me, David Romo or Yolanda or Cynthia would call me and say, can you please come down? Because this thing happened. Like, we're about to get ticketed because, and I was like, what? Because my thought was, as a lawyer who doesn't do criminal law, but I know enough that it's like, if one of you gets arrested, you're spending the weekend in jail. And so it was like, I'd have to book it to Duranguito and be like, okay, officer, like, what's going on? Can we, like, just make sure no one gets arrested, because they're going to spend the weekend in jail over something that's probably not violent, right? And it was the issue of, like, where they're, the planton is now, all of a sudden we realized at 4 o'clock on Friday that the canvas they have is not authorized by the local, because it's on a sidewalk. And it's not, now the sidewalk is not ADA compliant because they're taking up too much space. They have this RV that doesn't have, current registration. It was all these little, it was just, and I was like, let's just talk about what happened, officer. And it was almost, there were times where it was just, they felt disrespected by the organizers. And in one occasion, one of the office, I don't know if he was a sergeant, what his rank was, but he was pretty high up, and he said, it's just that kid that.
Oh.
And he said, just like that, Miss Carbajal, just like that. And I said, oh, am I doing it? I'm like, I didn't realize, I did not mean to offend you. Like, I'm sure he didn't either. Like, sometimes some of us, react this way when we're nervous or when we don't know what to say. And, like, we think the other person maybe is and I was like, really? Like, why am I here? Like, this should not have escalated. You are an officer of the law. Like, this is ridiculous. No one is burning a building. No one is, hurting someone else. They're just here trying to save this space. So I feel like, what a waste of resources, right? And what a waste of time for everyone. And what a failure to recognize that we should be applauding people who are sacrificing their own time and energy to stand up for our history, whether you agree with it or not, right? They have a right to be there. And like you said, there were all these beautiful events that it would seem like every time a really beautiful, successful event was put together by Paso del Sur, like with Dia de los Muertos, that was put on, the police were there. I spoke to them, and they said, okay, you all need to do this, do that. And we did, we complied to make sure that we weren't blocking traffic. And either the next day or 2 days after, they put up the fence to block off the street. And then and then like you said, we would do another event, and it's like, oh, the lights are off. Now Toñita's living in the dark. And so we would spend days, and it would happen almost always around a weekend or a holiday. And I would have to like drop whatever I was doing to say, hey, city
Yeah.
attorney, hey, whatever, can you please ensure that these two elderly women are not endangered? And it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's,
It's also, I mean, I'm not sure if this is well, just having conversations with Donita too, and knowing that because her staying there is her form of resistance, right? Like, you know, so but it comes at a cost of where
Mhm.
she doesn't have like a super for her building, so there's not a superintendent that goes and changes her light bulbs or makes sure that if if there's a crack in the wall that it gets sealed or something, so and I know like some of the stuff that she's told me about her apartment, like where it needs help or like where it needs a little bit of a maintenance, like, so if anybody's watching here and they want to go help out, she might welcome some of that help is because I know like air conditioning, it's summertime and I know she's asked some of the folks from Paso del Sur to help her out, but I don't think any of us are experts in those, like to really get an air conditioner going for the summer, So, the last time when I was doing the video, she asked me to go in, and I was like, Tonita, no, like I may have had a face cover on, but it makes me a little nervous. But like one of the doors fell off its railing, so I helped her with that, But she doesn't have a maintenance person anymore, and whoever owns the building isn't helping her either, um, so yeah, I mean, it's a very brave act in my opinion, of what she's doing, and I think that if somebody like who might be watching this today, if they could take like, want to volunteer to help her fix up some of the stuff in the apartment, by all means, please do so because that is your own form of protest against the city is by helping out and those parts and those types of aspects too, like maybe kind of redesigning what organizing looks like too, so it's being there for the community, what's interesting about all this, Vero, is that I just kind of so I moved here in 2016 from Cruces, I mean not from very far away, and I was working at UTEP, and I really just was kind of like at a crossroads, like I don't know if this is for me anymore, um, and just really itching to be an artist, like a full-time artist, and it was a really crazy move, but I did it. And so and my background, like my academic background, is also looking at critical race theory, so having an understanding of these kind of critical components of marginalization and like hegemonic discourse, all of that, right? Like that's the stuff I studied as a
Mhm.
grad student, right? And so I've always tried to use that training as a grad student in my art, and so somehow, some way, right? And so one of the reasons why I even ended up in Duranguito was because I didn't go for it because there was a call of art for art or anything. I went because I was reading up on it. I was reading up about what happened in the city council in 2006, who were the key players in that, in 2006, and just educating myself, and so um, Franco, do you know Franco, the guy he's got the long curly hair, he wears glasses, yeah, Franco. So he invited
He did
me.
he did the
Huh?
planton he did the planton, I think from beginning to end.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
so there's been some really, really like dedicated folks, and
Mhm.
so I was very honored when he asked me to go set up a table at one of the markets, at the Mercadito,
Mhm.
and so I went and I did it, and I was like, wow, like really inspired just being there, and like a month later, Paso del Sur on their Facebook had just said that they were looking for people like to go clean up the neighborhood. Like I thought when I went, I thought I was gonna be raking leaves and sweeping and like the whole
Mhm.
broken window thing, like cleaning up. That's what I thought I was getting into, right? And as soon as I got there, David recognized me. He's like, "You're an artist, aren't you?" He's like, "Well, I've got another project for you. Can you help us create some art?" And I was just like, "Sure, I guess," So like and then I quickly, started, deciding like, well, I could get in trouble for this too, I mean, the city could see it as graffiti or as, defacing property or whatever, and I mean,
Their property because they own the buildings now.
yeah, and so all of it is a form of resistance, of telling the
Mhm.
city, this is my protest now. I want my protest to come through not just like my soft pastel portraits, but the other things that I'm doing too, like the piece that I did with the Adelitas that faces Paisano, that it got kind of ripped up, but those are also different forms of expression, and so, but the reality is like, I went to Duranguito with thinking I was going to be a little worker bee, like I've told you, like throw the trash, like sweep up. That's what I thought I was going to be doing, but that completely went a different direction.
Can
Yeah.
you tell us about the mural of Chavita? And so that's the mural that you used to promote this event.
hmm
Can
Yeah.
you tell me about that?
Yeah, so we're talking about community, and so I never met Chavita, right? Like, I think he died like a few days literally before I went to go help out clean up, um, but David Romo had asked me, can you do a mural? And I've never done a mural ever, and I do work with paint, but not as frequently, right? I love to work with pastels. That is what I feel is my best medium,
Mhm.
So I was like, yeah, I'll take a shot at it. I mean, if it looks like crap, then we'll just paint over it, like, but as we might as well try to. But I didn't have. I still don't know how to do a mural technically, right? Like I took what I knew how to do on paper on canvas and I just kind of transferred it over to that little wall, and and I wasn't necessarily in a place where I could buy my own paints. Like, I was kind of like the artist struggle, like you either buy paints for Paso del Sur or you eat. So David bought a few house paint cans, like it was just, there wasn't many, and so the entire budget for that mural was probably less than $100. Yeah, and just it took maybe about 3 days to finish it up, and that's it, and they wanted to honor some of the residents who had been displaced, and who, unfortunately, displacement for elderly is different for displacement like for somebody my age, I mean, I think those moves are much harder on just generally speaking, so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, so
Well, I didn't know the history of the making of the mural.
mm,
Um, Thank you. It is beautiful. I was Chavita's lawyer along with a number of other people. We represented Chavita before his landlord at the time, Don Luciano, who still owns the now empty building on Overland and Chihuahua Street. And so it's on the other side of the fences, right? That street, Chihuahua, used to be open, so you could just walk to it. And um, we took that case on in the fall of 2016, and I got to see his apartment. We
mm,
went in one day, and he said, "Ayer casi me morí," and I almost died last night. And we said, "What happened?" And so we looked up, and there was this huge hole in his ceiling. And we had gotten a lot of rain that like November and December. We had even hail, and so he's like, if I hadn't moved my bed, a week ago, I would have died because the ceiling just caved in all of a sudden, with the weight of the hail and the rain and just like the decrepitness of the roof. Um, but he didn't want to leave, and his neighbors didn't want to leave, and they all. It was just so. It was so eye-opening, as you were saying, as a young person, it was so or younger, because I'm not young
yeah,
anymore, but as younger compared to him, because Toñita's 92. I'm not sure what age Chavita was, but he was, I think, also he was in his 80s at the time.
mm,
Um, they really took care of each other,
mm,
and they kept an eye on each other. All of them knew each other by name. They used to walk the neighborhood. They knew each other's patterns, and so if they didn't see someone for a day or two, they would say like, did they go visit relatives, or like, are they doing okay? So
yeah,
it was really a community,
mm,
and um, and he had, like Donita, he had been there for decades. He could tell us the history of the buildings,
mm,
and uh, he was just such a beautiful character and such a beautiful, funny person. And we had to sue, uh, Alan Dicker and Kesu Park and Cassandra McCrae. We took on that case. I mean, that case, um, we had a number of, it was a tenement, right? So it was like 17 people sharing two toilets and two showers. Um,
Oh my God.
Most of them didn't have sinks in their spaces. If they did, it was a hand sink and a little bit of a kitchen space. And they all paid rent. It wasn't subsidized at all, and it was, like I said, falling apart. Um, that case gave me nightmares for weeks because I couldn't sleep knowing the conditions they were in, and they didn't want to leave. And so we used whatever methods we could to try to get them to at least live in better conditions, because we wanted, of course, to protect the historic building, but really it was about them. And that's sort of like where the conflict starts to rise, where you're just like, I want to keep you safe, and I know you love this community, but I don't want you to die in the process, right? And I understand, what you were talking about before, that when you are older, a dramatic change in your environment could equal your death, right? Because it is so devastating to them. And so we knew that we could move them into public housing pretty quickly, and we did. And they moved into Segundo Barrio. To the credit of the housing authority, they came through. They bought furniture for them and stuff. And Chavita was you know, in a hygienically speaking place. He was in a much better place. It was a sweet little apartment that he got. The rent was cheaper, if you believe that, right? And he got really good furniture donated. It was like a really fresh start. But for him, it was devastating. And he died. He died in February. He was moved out February of 2017, I believe, and then he died 2 years later. And he died in a nursing home. And we found out, we went to visit him. I didn't find out he was there until it was too late. And when we went to visit, he had died that morning. And then it took us a really long time to get his ashes and to do a proper goodbye for him. And so then to see your mural was just so, because it's not just the mural, right? It's what you said. Like, you quoted him as saying, aquí me quiero quedar. And it's like, he is there. His resistance is there. He's so is thank you for doing that, because it was so necessary, and it's beautiful. But you did a lot with very little, which is very El Paso, by the way.
Thank you.
You
Yeah. What's that?
It's very El Paso to do a lot with very little.
Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure. I think that's part of the message that I want to communicate, because there have been a lot of artists who have expressed interest in doing something with Duranguito, but they want budgets, and it's something that we can't afford them, like at all. I mean, and I just want to really stress to anybody who is interested in doing art with Duranguito, like, let's talk about inexpensive ways that's a big part of why I want to communicate this. Somebody here is asking, where is the mural? It is on C-Funk. C-Funk, the mural. Okay. Oh. Hola, hola. So people are saying hi. So our friend Isis from Miami is saying hi. So she has some Chuco roots. So apparently, I didn't know this, Vero, that Instagram Live does hour segments. So so they cut us off at an hour, and then I had remembered. So quick note to anybody who wants to organize. Sometimes you have to make real quick decisions. I remember you said you wanted to save these conversations, so I had to do all that before I could go back live. But we have the conversation saved, so we can move on. So I was telling you about, yeah. So if anybody wants to join or to do something with Duranguito, let us know. Um, the residents there are so easy to talk to, and I know that considering the circumstances right now, we have to be practice social distancing when we do go down there, you know. But art is always welcome, you know. It just we just can't promise you a big budget. It's not gonna happen, you know. And frankly, you know, I mean, it's great to get paid as an artist. Trust me, that's the goal, is to make money off of your art, to be self-sustaining, and you know. But sometimes we have to look at certain things in our lives, you know, like as our service to the community. So there might not always be a payout for everything that we do when it comes to Duranguito. So yeah, for artists specifically, you know, that's that's my point. So
Yeah, and there's a lot that you can do to support Duranguito. I know it's hard and it's not always welcome.
mhm.
Um, even just you know calling and emailing your city
City
council
rep.
rep,
Hmm.
and if you can stomach it, listen to the city council meetings. They're on YouTube. They're on the city's website live every other week. So the
Hmm.
next one won't be this week, it'll be the following week on Monday and Tuesday. And it's like really insightful to hear these discussions and to find out the sometimes it's disappointing. I mean, it's very disappointing to see just the level of ignorance
Hmm.
that some of the city council reps and the mayor have when it comes to these issues, right? So they'll
Yeah.
they'll just talk about Max Grossman, who's great. I mean, Max has played a huge important role
Mhm.
in helping us understand some of like the financial issues involved in the history.
Right. Hmm.
But then you come to Toñita, and it's like, oh my God, books could be written about Toñita, right? If Toñita ran for mayor, I would be scared to run against her because these
Oh yeah, she would win in a landslide, man.
can tell you like they think that this arena will save El Paso from financial ruin. Let me tell you, I was here in Duranguito when they told me the same thing about the convention center. Let's talk about the convention center. No one uses it. It's falling apart. It didn't bring all the economic, rebuilding and money that they said it would. And
Mhm.
so I think we need to start harvesting that knowledge, especially with our viejitos, to really think about like what do you think we should do to grow? How should we be growing? How should we be investing our public funding? What's the role of police? Going back to that, Doñita will tell you she calls. There was a police officer back in the 90s when Duranguito was rough. When she was really worried about kids walking to school and seeing like
Mhm.
prostitution
Mhm.
in in the middle of the day, and moms having to like blind their children, and kids not being able to play in the park because there were needles
Mhm.
and drug paraphernalia that they could be endangered by. There was petty vandalism where like if you went to a concert at the convention center, you might come out and not have tires on your car, or your battery might be gone. And
Uh-huh.
so she organized a couple of women who lived in Duranguito, and they found one cop, and she calls him era un policía con conciencia. He was
Mhm.
a cop with conscience, and
Mhm.
she asked him, "How do we get rid of, you know, the illegal dumping here? Because we see illegal, like we see mattresses on the street, we see like just all this junk. Like, how do we start with that?" And so he would get them in touch with people at the city, and then she asked him, well, can you patrol? But like patrol in a way that's efficient and useful to the community. And so he was like, okay. So the women would make dinner for the cops, like at midnight or 2 in the morning, and they would make menudo and coffee. And
Mhm.
the cops would come over for their break, and then there was more of a presence, but it was a community welcomed presence.
Mhm.
And that's how they cleaned it up. And then in 1998, the city decided to apply for some federal funding to clean up the neighborhood. But it was very strategic even back then because they only did it to clean up the sidewalks and the exterior, right? They still were not looking at the apartments and the buildings themselves, and they certainly did not agree to protect it as a historic neighborhood, which would have, if it was a historic neighborhood, we wouldn't be talking about the arena being there.
Mhm.
But going back to Bonita, I feel like everyone should get to spend some time with her because
Yeah.
he just gives you so much hope, and like as you said, she's a resistor. I mean,
Mhm.
she just is so valiant. She's so fearless and brave.
Mhm.
That yeah, I just love
Yeah.
her.
No, that and she is really sharp, you know, like she remembers facts. I mean, like I could barely remember what I did yesterday, you know what I mean? And, like she just remember like I have try when I do have those opportunities to speak with her and it's just her and I or whatever, you know, to talk about her youth, you know, and you know, it, when she first told me like, oh yeah, I would do like she would dance to like the danzón or the cha cha cha, you know, like that. I was just like, can you imagine, like, you know, you don't even picture people dancing like that, like back in the day when you think of black and white photos, you know what I mean? Like, seems like she had a very lively kind of young adulthood, you know, um, where she was, she's one thing, like one of the messages is very clear to me from Tonita is that she has always been part of the community, even as a young person, you know. So I think that that form of resistance, you know, the fact that she dressed up as an Adelita, I think that tells you a lot about what you know where she is like where her politics are where her belief system is her values you know so I think she's just generally a cool person to get to know you know she has a lot of cool stories.
And she's very practical. When the city was doing like the downtown just recently, I think it was like maybe right before Christmas or so, that they did like the Segundo Barrio in downtown like lighting project where they have like these huge kind of intro to the neighborhood, and they have lighting around it, and there's like more street lighting lining up certain streets. I don't know if it's like Santa Fe Street they got it, or maybe Mesa Street. But she was like, as they were putting it up, she told the workers like, what are you gonna do? Just spotlight the potholes and like the cracks in the sidewalk? She's like, shouldn't you be fixing that? Like, isn't that community improvement? Why put up lighting and distract us?
Mm,
We're gonna keep on the sidewalk, and it's like, damn, yeah, that's exactly it. Like,
yeah
let's let's get real about what matters and what really makes a community better.
yeah
Um,
yeah you
and
know
it's just
which is so interesting right because if you think about her voice specifically and the things that she says, you know, even like in when we were recording this video for Tacoma Community College, when she mentions about parking, you know, like those are things that sometimes I forget about, you know, like well, she's right, like where are people going to park? You know what I mean? So like, and but her message comes from experience, right? It comes from her years of seeing things and being observant because she's super observant, you know, she's like I said, she's sharp as a nail, you know, in the sense of why she is being resistant. You know, she has her reasons. I don't think it's just because. Um, I believe that she has a very many reasons to resist this um, issue, and I think that she does a wonderful job doing it. We could all learn from her. We have a question here, Vero. It says, how do you all feel about recruiting police officers from the communities they are from to represent and protect that community? Thank you to who wrote this? Isis from Florida. Do you have a response to that? Like about people coming, like people of color, I guess, becoming police officers and border patrol, whatever, law enforcement.
I think that happens already. Um, and I think when no, I mean when we think about Paso, like, are we talking like at the neighborhood level, that kind of recruitment? And I think just having been a supervisor, having been supervised, and then having been a supervisor for as long as I have been, um, of course recruitment is super important, right? And making sure that you understand why people are trying to become police officers to begin with. Is it someone who loves guns and loves power and loves policing, or is it someone who's just like, I want to help my community be better? So that's one issue, is like being really strict about who you're trying to recruit, not just like I said before, not just because make sure that they're people of color, but also their values, and their motivation. But then training is really, really important, and supervising, and making sure that people are not abusing their authority. And it can be in different ways. Like, it doesn't have to lead to a fatality. It can be little things like, you know, um, the way they deal with their customers are us, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, And so I think, yeah, most definitely we need to see if there's some disparity in the way that they're recruiting, but it's really about monitoring what they're doing
Right.
and the reason for doing it. Like I said before, like the examples in Duranguito, the cops, for the most part, the cops that were patrolling during the planton, which was in 2018, they were Chicanos.
Yeah.
They
Well,
were
yeah.
Chicanos. They were so irritated to be there and irritated at us for being for exercising our First Amendment right to protest. I mean, the people at the siege, if you look at the siege, right? I remember showing up because I was working with Max Grossman's attorney on trying to do these emergency orders, and so I wasn't there. I was just my phone was just blowing up with pictures and images. But by the time I got there, it was like 1 p.m. and so it was super hot. I was wearing heels. I was wearing like court clothing, and I was like, "What's happening?" Like none of the pictures I saw could have prepared me for the planton. And I got there and the cops were just being awful. It was mostly Chicano cops. And then I found a woman cop, a female cop. She was white. And I called her by her name because she had her name on her uniform. And I said, "Officer, whatever her name was, can I go inside and talk to, I think some of my clients are inside, and can I bring water?" And she said, "Absolutely.
Mm.
Come on in." And she was just like, yeah, this is ridiculous. Isn't like I could see in her face that she was like, yeah, I'm with you. Um, and not to say that every Chicano cop that was there was terrible, but that overall you saw like you're like, what are you doing? Why are you joyfully you know being so abusive
Mm-hmm.
and
Ouch.
escalating things?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes it's like it's not just like I said before, it's not just about the way that we recruit and think like, oh, it's a numbers game. It's
Mm-hmm.
more of like, a values game,
Yeah.
and really
Yeah.
need to.
Definitely. I still machismo too, so some of that. But
Yes.
those cultures, yeah, for sure. In law enforcement, I think there's, my my master's degree is in criminal justice, which so weird because that wasn't necessarily my training. It's just when I was going through grad school, uh, I was just asking people like, I want to do like something with social justice. It's always been kind of my thing, and the response was go into criminal justice because there's at least enough critical scholars in there to help you what you want, what you were trying to do, right? But a lot of my classmates were some of those folks, like the power hungry, like, and it was so like some of the conversations we had in those classes were intense, but yeah, like there really is there's a sense of power and for some people, then there's a sense of justice for other people, so there's a comment here from Mishki LaRue saying city government definitely has a culture that reinforces the behavior too. Absolutely. Agreed,
Mhm.
with the bullying behavior, I guess, so that's how I see it. So do we want to move on to the other questions, Vero? Like the some of the may I ask you a question?
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Of
Okay.
course.
So as a lawyer, do you think that there is value in peaceful protest or really any type of protest?
Yes, I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier that I think, I've gone to a lot of protests as a protester and also as a legal observer, where we want to make sure that people uh, are safe, especially when we're protesting with people who may be undocumented,
Mm,
people who have previous records, people who live in public housing. Like there's a lot of or students who are like want to apply for financial aid later on, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want you to get arrested. I think that that's a really important conversation to have within a group is how do you protect each other, and I think Paso del Sur has really tried to do that is to see like what's worth getting arrested for and what's not, and if this happens, what's the plan? So do we have criminal attorneys ready to go and do this kind of thing? Now, in terms of the utility of the protest, like as I said before, I think that um, I've unfortunately I don't think I've ever seen a protest result in change.
yep,
Like with Duranguito, like the
yep,
siege was incredible, and it got all kinds of attention. It didn't change anything, you
right.
know. It didn't mean that the city said, "Oh, yeah, no, this the community has spoken. We're going to move this
Mm-hmm.
um, to a different location just to appease them." Even though I
Mm-hmm.
still disagree with us doing it in the beginning, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But the city never said that. Never, the city never said, "Let's have a conversation with Paso del Sur. Let's talk about it." By the way, I would love to see a debate between Mayor Margot and Toñita. I think that would be like amazing.
That would
Um,
be.
JP Bryan is great. I believe that he's done a lot to help El Pasoans, and he's not from here or anything. That he's still done a lot to protect our buildings. That said, I think a much more engaging debate would be one between Toñita and the mayor. Um,
Oh, he wouldn't even know how to respond to her. Like, no.
I would, I would, yeah. I feel so bad for him if that ever happened.
Yeah.
I think that it's as a participant, I think that's really why I go to these events, is that you just um you get reinvigorated and inspired, and sometimes you just need to like, well, we can't right now hug each other, but at least see each other
Hmm.
and gather strength in knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, you are the progressive, crazy voice in your family. You are the radical who is saying like, this is why immigrants are important to our community, and this is why the caravan isn't what you think it is, and let's look at numbers and having, I have a lot of. I think I'm not alone in being there's a question. Why isn't the city council listening to the people if they are that concerned about something? Yeah. Why? Because it's not about numbers. And sometimes if you think about the protest as being a numbers game where it's like, if we get this many people, we're gonna change things. If we sign this many petitions, if we write this many letters, and almost never that happens because they don't have numbers, they have power, they
Right.
have political connection, they have money,
Hmm.
they have our money often being used against us, and so it's not about numbers, right?
Hmm.
um it's really about how do we tap into that power. I mean, that's why I'm running for mayor, because that's really what it's about, is having people who are making decisions who are going to listen.
Hmm.
And we're going to have these conversations, not just for Duranguito, but many other topics as well. We let them know what we want, and they go and do something else. Oh yeah, and it's not just the city. It's EPISD with the school closures. It's the TCQ, the environmental quality. They do these kind of like dog and pony shows, like with Marathon Refinery, where you just go and you speak your mind and you speak the truth, and they're just like, yeah, thanks for showing up, goodbye, the permit's still issued.
Yeah, like the Sunset Heights stuff that's going on right now too. Like they want to expand the interstate. Like yeah, it's there's well, we've had that conversation too before with like some of the folks from Paso del Sur, is that there's various Duranguitos in El Paso. Like it's just bringing light to all those issues. So yeah, absolutely. It's I think, in my opinion, I think that's just corruption. Like when the city government just doesn't listen. I mean, it's so weird. It's so weird. Yeah.
But it's not unique to El Paso, and
Hmm.
that's something that we need to realize, that it's
Hmm.
it's not just like, um it's not just us. It's happening everywhere, everywhere. We're
Right.
seeing it right now, right?
Mm.
Throughout the country, we're seeing it. Where people are protesting peacefully, not peacefully. They've been doing things. This isn't. George Floyd isn't the first person to die like this.
Hmm.
And we're still. It's like our voices don't matter.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, so I think that's why we're seeing people like AOC. We're seeing people like the all over,
Hmm.
women and men, rise up and decide, I'm going to run for office, because that's how we change things. And that's honestly going back to why I'm even running. um, I had gotten away from what we call community development cases, and these are like environmental justice cases, like everything at the tummy side, right? Fighting the recycling facilities, fighting the school districts, fighting the semi traffic, um, because fighting the housing authority. They're just they are heart-wrenching cases as a lawyer because um, civil rights in our courts has just been, dismantled. It's really hard to win on discrimination cases, especially in a community that's majority minority like ours. And then I got a promotion as a group coordinator, including community development. I was like, damn it, I'm back in the I'm back. I want to do my housing cases because I can sue, I can win, I can litigate and get a result. Um, and now I'm going back to these cases that we keep losing through the courts, or even not getting. There is no remedy, right, through the court system. And then I started to look at what other communities are doing throughout our state as part of community development, and it's like they're winning in elections. They're winning at the county level, at the school district level, at the city level, where they're electing people from the community who understand the language of both sides and are able to say no. No, you can't build a road through this community. No, you can't gentrify. No, you can't displace. No, you can't concentrate all of your government spending in this one area of town. And I think that's when the light bulb went off and I was like, fine, I'll do it. Like I just need to throw myself in the race. And if someone better joins, I'm dropping out because I don't want to be a politician. But I didn't see that. And so I'm like, I'm gonna stay in it. And I think that whoever is watching right now, you have to be next. Like we need to keep thinking about structural changes. And oftentimes it has to happen at that level, where people are running government and making those kinds of decisions.
So, I lived in Las Cruces for many years, and there were some of my friends who ran for office. Like, I don't know, do you know Angelica Rubio? She's from Cruces. She's a state rep.
She sounds familiar.
Yeah,
I think I know.
So like I've known Angelica for years, right? Like I know her parents. I've been to her house over by Roswell, New Mexico, so but she went into now that you mentioned that, like for anybody who is listening about how to get involved, they do like the Engage project or something like that for women who want to go into politics or who are interested in politics. Are you familiar? Or did you do anything like that yourself or
I haven't. I've been little by little talking to different groups, and yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, that's really what we need because that's what the other side has, right? They have the infrastructure of support. They can groom the candidates, and they can I mean, it's a journey and it's a job, and so like, to have mentorship along the way is super, super important. There was a comment saying it feels that our city government has turned white. It's lost some of its Hispanic roots. I don't think I think you're right. I don't think it's offensive. I think and I don't think, for me, white, I don't know if it's the right choice of word, to be honest, because I know a lot of people in El Paso who are white, who are amazing, who are doing really awesome social justice work from a really good place. I think it's more of like, I've wrestled with this for a long time, and I think of it as like a lot of people, well, not a lot. There are people in El Paso who are afraid of being deported culturally. Like they're here legally, but there's like this fear of like, I don't know, like you're gonna be thrown back to Mexico, and that's not where you want to go because you don't know anything about it,
right.
And so you overcorrect. So there's like a lot of that, I think, happening. Some people are really young. Some of my followers are very young, so they may not remember this. But it was around, I don't know, 2008 or 9 when we were fighting to protect Segundo Barrio. There's this image that Paso del Sur knows that very well. They've used it a lot. Do you remember this from the Glass Beach study? And it was a plan that El Pasoans paid for. It was like over $100,000 study that was done. It was really poorly done. Like it has like grammatical mistakes, misspellings. It's a pile of garbage. But it also had this image of a viejito, like Toñita, but in a man, right? Just a viejito, sweet, adorable. and then a picture of Matthew McConaughey and Penelope Cruz. And the description was Old El Paso, New El Paso. And Old El Paso was not just literally old, it was also dirty, gritty, Spanish only speaking, a dusty, rundown Chevy truck and something. Whereas the other people who are obviously not Latinos, not old, were also new and I don't know what the words were. It was
Hollywood.
awful.
Hollywood. They were
Hollywood, but
mm-hmm.
yeah, also white and middle class and you know, hip and all these things. And it was just incredibly offensive. And you didn't see anyone on city council denounce it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like you haven't seen anyone on city council say, why the hell do we have 10 historic districts, which one protects the buildings, right? Protects the neighborhood, but it really is a signal of what you think is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we have these 10 valuable historic districts? Only one is a Chicano rooted district, and that's Chihuahuita, which is, you can walk it in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
It's tiny.
Yeah.
It's right across from Segundo Barrio, which is 20 times its size,
right,
and is from the same time period. You go to the Chamizal, you go to Duranguito, you go to Lincoln Park, they're not protected. Mm-mm. And it's, but they were, I mean, when we were segregated as a community, they were the Mexican wards, they were the Mexican neighborhoods, and we get a 0.25, you know, a quarter of a mile. That's what we get as our history that's protected in this community. Yeah. And so it's so easy sometimes for people to be like, oh, we don't have any pride in ourselves, and we blame ourselves, right? We all want to leave, we all dump on hell El Paso. But it's all like, you have to pull it back and be like, well, why is that? It's because our leadership has never respected us. And so we have to reclaim that. And like going back to art, I think that's why art is so powerful, because you can have that kind of pride grow, you know, and resist the oppression, the erasing, displacing, and reclaim it in a way that's beautiful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, you're right. You know, I think that if more people practiced art, I think that it's you know, whatever, like tapping into some type of creativity, I think is really like I have a friend, you might know her, Marisa from Hope Border. So we talk, you know, and sometimes she'll tell me like, Jose, you know, I feel like creatively like dry right now, like, you know, because she's a dancer, she's a trained dancer, you know, and so so you know, so we're always trying to discuss ways of like how to, like, you know, use that creativity, use your dance, and do it in some other ways, you know. And then she had this beautiful idea of, you know, like a form of resistance of like bringing like ballet folklorico and bringing it to the bridge and people just dancing across the bridge, which is kind of really beautiful if you think about it, you know. But yeah, I do think art can be very healing in a sense too, right? So like there's a healing component when you are an artist, I believe, you know, to you're just trying to make sense of the world through your art. For me, for sure, you know. So yes. So I'm gonna ask you another question, Vero. It says, in general, what changes will you make to help artists access art spaces and programs in the city when you're elected to the mayor?
When I am your mayor, well, I think first and foremost, I want to have this conversation on a greater scale, right, with different types of artists. El Paso has, I mean, when I was in college reading about, you know, Chicano literature, so many of my assigned books were El Paso rooted artists and writers, right, who had left El Paso. You see it all the time with the visual arts, and so first of all, we had to redefine what art means, right? So it's, for me, I wrote a children's book which has a lot of art, and my artist is from Juarez. Yeah. And so one, talking about books like literature at different genres, music like Khalid. I mean, there's so many artists that have come from El Paso, theater and acting, and then the visual arts, like, you know, what you do, mural, and then also I'm packaging that into all these other things, right? Muralists and people who do, work on canvas, people who do recycled art. I mean, there's just so much. I've gotten a chance to really be. I mean, if I would die without art, like my heart would just shrivel up if we didn't live in such an artistically strong community. Um,
May I ask
and
you, do you have a creative outlet yourself?
no,
No?
I no, I
Oh, you
well, in
write.
terms of
You write.
I write, and
Okay.
I think as I've always storytelling
Okay.
is my
Yeah,
forte.
you're wonderful. Yeah, I've listened. You do a really good job.
I was a very, very quiet kid, very, very quiet kid, but that allowed me to sit in a corner in my grandmother's kitchen and listen to stories and stories and stories, and some of it chisme, some of it political, some of it all over the place. And I think I didn't start school till I was 6. I didn't learn to read till I was 6. I was never read to, but it was easy for me to pivot to love reading and writing because I had the storytelling.
Mm,
And my vocabulary was so big because I was exposed to adult conversations.
mm,
Um, and so I tell parents, I don't have any kids myself, but I tell parents that a lot, like don't shield your kids.
mm,
Even, I mean, of course be careful, but like we really need to talk to kids about things that are a little bit outside of what we think is their age group.
yeah.
But going back to what you were saying, for me it's writing. I did I'm thinking back, I did poetry in college. I organized a literature magazine. Um, and I started writing this children's book like over a decade ago, and then finally self-published it. So that's really when I'm really feeling stuff, I have to write it out. I like creating things, but I'm not very good at it, so I tend to stick to what I
Well, I
I'm
think it's an art, like for me, writing is, I learned about the art of writing when I was doing my thesis in grad school. Like, I mean, just the ways to play with words and structure and, how it comes out, the delivery. So I mean, I don't, I think I'm a decent writer, but I am certainly a better painter and better at drawing than that other stuff. But, oh, cool, 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 cool.
Well, so
Um, yeah.
to your question, I think one, having a conversation with people. I am also, look, um when I came back to El Paso after, I mean, I went to an Ivy League university, right? And um I had I could have gone anywhere, made a bazillion dollars at this point in my life. I came home and I was doing nonprofit work, and then I left. I went to law school, came back and took a job with Legal Aid, which is a nonprofit. Again, I could have at this point, like I could have amassed a lot of wealth, and I chose not to. But I know what it's like to struggle. And the fact is, I don't live in utopia. Like I don't expect anyone, as my one of my biggest mentors at work, who I had the fortune of having as my supervisor. We're unionized, right? So our legal aid is unionized. Even then, it's been a struggle. Um, he would tell people in power within our structure, no one here took a vow of poverty. Why are we asking our attorneys to take a vow of poverty? It's self-destructive because people are worried about paying their bills, instead of focusing on their work, and it does take a toll. I bought a house in 2007 because the bank said I could afford it. My dogs could have gotten that house loan, because that's when the banks were being terrible. The market crashed, and I was like, what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna get a raise for a long time. I've been there where you're just like, what do I do? And yes, you're trying to work and you're doing your best and you're doing the highlight, but at the same time, you're just like, there's a very stark reality that you might, lose your housing. And I think, you and I have talked about this a bit, that you're an artist, but you're also a micro enterprise,
Mm,
right? You are trying to live off of that art, and rightfully so. Like we live in an era where, so many of our people, and I'm talking about Latinos, people of color, people from working class backgrounds, could never dream. I mean, that was a dream to be an artist, because they had to pay the bills, and their educational opportunities were so limited
mhm.
that they had to go find a vocation.
Right.
Um,
Right, which it's not easy. Let me tell you, like I am working on a shoestring budget. You know what I mean? Like literally. my input to that is, well, what I've been able to do is find a lot of well, I also come from the background of a person in higher ed, you know, an former administrator, so with the master's degree. So I do have technically something to bounce back on, right? So that, which is great. But the reality is I would rather be doing art, you know, and working within the community and being an entrepreneur in the sense of trying to bridge art and education and student leadership all together somehow, right? Which I've been able to do it slowly, but I think that um, I've had to get work like as what do you call it when I work with some nonprofits. I've worked with the Borderland Rainbow Center. I've done some contract work with them. I've also worked with that's called the Center for Educational Training, which is CET. So they do freelance stuff. So I'm doing a lot of freelance stuff on the side, right? And I'm also a fairly decent technical writer, so I do a lot of resume writing for folks and stuff. So I find ways to supplement my income, right? So I wish art could be at 100%, you know, but that is a pretty big struggle here in El Paso. It's just, you know, I mean, um, I think there's a lot of stuff to take into consideration, but I think, um, you know, how do I put this? The best way I think that the city or the community could help is really to, like, if you see a print, purchase the print, you know, like if you have, like, I think those, like, selling smaller kind of items that are a little bit easier to reproduce are probably the best way, you know, like I also think that as an educator too, like you know, I did get paid money to do the video for Tacoma Community College, you know, so I'm starting to, like, open my eyes to there's other ways to create money. It may not come directly 100% from the creation of a certain piece. Oh, and I also get a lot of apart from doing, like, but the things that interest me, like if I do like a black trans woman, that's my own expression, right? But I also get a lot of commissioned work from families. They want, you know, abuelito, like, you know, or abuelita or whatever, you know. So I do get a lot of that stuff. I don't share that stuff because it's usually private, you know, but so but it's just, you know, supporting artists, you know, supporting artists who are different than you too, you know, like there's you know, there's a young woman, I don't remember her name right now, but she's here on Instagram and she posed a really serious question, which is the the art market here in El Paso seems to be very monopolized in a sense, right? Or saturated with these prototype artists, you know, like they fit a certain kind of criteria. They're not very political, you know, and so, like, for the artists who do want to be a little bit more radical or vocal about their opinions, you know, those opportunities definitely start to lessen as you express your opinions, you know. So so I would say to anybody watching or to folks who want to help out small entrepreneurships is even, or if you know a teacher who wants to bring in an artist to do some type of workshop, you know, spread the word too, you know that artists can't work for free. You know, I've done a lot of there's a big difference when people approach you for free art or when an artist is willing to donate a piece, right? Or like when because I came to you saying I want to do a piece of art for your campaign, right? But it's very different when you have people um, constantly asking for donated art. You know, it's just like that's. I think there's a fine balance that you have to do as an artist, you know, because you have to think of yourself too. I mean, you've got to eat at the end of the day. So, so
I agree with all of that, and I think as part of our, you know, as you know, are we running a grassroots campaign? And so I am not taking money from people whose values are not aligned with me. That said, the campaign is in many ways a small business, right? We need staff, we need to produce materials, we need the materials designed, we need them distributed,
mhm,
and we, you know, one, our community isn't a rich community, and two, our community is you know, is in need of job and opportunities. And I think So right away, we knew that we were going to pay people if they're going to work significantly in our campaign. It might not be a lot. Sometimes it's like almost symbolic, but we're not asking for free work because I've been on the receiving end of that as well. And I've also think like I know like with you, people are like, can you just do this for free? Can you just attend? And it's like I understand that you don't have a lot of funds, but this is of value.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you just to start to get into the habit of expecting that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the graphic art that you see from us, unless it's been donated from the beginning from the artist, we pay for.
That's awesome.
I mean, we've been struggling where we are like at nearly zero. And I'll just start praying, like, okay, like, this is what I need, God. This is, and then it'll multiply. We'll get a big rush of donations out of nowhere, but never. And we've had to tell artists, like, it's going to be a little bit, just like, be patient with us, but we are going to pay you. Like, it's going to come. And it does. Because I understand their struggle. And I also want to encourage them to keep doing what they're doing. And I want to signal to them, like, your work is valuable and we appreciate it. And so I don't,
Yeah.
I'm 100% with you on that.
Yeah, there's some questions here that I really, maybe, and we've got about 13 minutes before we have to go on to the next hour. Oh, sorry. But let me see. Any thoughts on economic alternatives, examples, co-ops, bartering systems, time-backs, mutual aid? The next question is really powerful. Back to the prototype. I'm a Puerto Rican myself, so Silver Pick Studios says, so I don't have the same narrative as most Hispanics artists that live here in El Paso. What are ways non-Chicano artists can still be seen and help in the community? Um, I think that if you want to be seen in the community, I mean, like, Duranguito doesn't care if we're if you're from Puerto Rico or wherever. We just need artists out there, That's one way to get your art out there too, like finding different communities that could benefit from your art too, and like I said, we have to eat as artists, but we also have to there's going to be times that I think it is important to donate art. Like I donated my time and effort to the Chavita piece. Like I didn't get paid for any of that, So I think it's just kind of choosing who you want to work with and what registers within yourself and I think there are communities out there, and I looking at art through a different perspective too, maybe also of like getting a few free pieces here and there. Like that's how I kind of got started, But I think there's various ways, and really going to markets, for Silver Pick Studios. When we do have another market at Duranguito, please come display your art. It's an open invitation to anybody who's an artist out there. So yeah, that's my suggestion. So
Yeah, I think we need to create as a city. I think our city government needs to um, really rethink the idea of festivals, and now in light of the pandemic, but even before then, how do we make festivals really take advantage of that time and space for people, not have everything be downtown? So that has to also be addressed, but really make it easy for people to come and to have an enjoyable time, so that you have a festival like with the Dia de los Libros that they did last year. I went with my cousin and her toddler,
mhm.
and as a children's book author, I was like, oh, this is going to be so exciting. And it wasn't what I expected, because we also need to make these events engaging,
Right,
right? So
right,
they have like workshops and like meet the artist, take a picture with
right,
the artist, watch
right,
the artist at work, like just get
right.
really creative and make
Yeah,
it accessible in terms of space and time.
no,
Um,
definitely.
and then, as she was saying, I mean, I think it's super important uh, to open it up to this space where like you do have a chance to see all the diversity.
Yeah.
My goal is to one have festivals that are really awesome and can attract a lot of people, so it becomes part of our tourism.
Mhm.
But also, I think that you can't think of your market as just being El Paso.
No, absolutely not. And what I wanted to add to that is, um, for the city I mean, I know that the different departments like MCAT or whatever that exists, there there's a really kind of long process you have to go to even go to a workshop sometimes. Like you have to to go to a workshop, right? Last year, I had applied for an MCAT program, which was kind of like entrepreneur artist, and I had proposed like the art of social justice, and really what my main concern of wanting to attend that was to learn about taxes and stuff, because if you really want to be a bona fide business, small business, whatever, like you need to learn this stuff. And so those opportunities, you either have to learn them by failure, or like trial by, what is it called? Like by mistakes, you know what I mean? Or, or not being selected, because the other alternative is working with the city, but it's just usually like a certain group of people. Sometimes it seems like, so I don't know. So I think that in terms of advice I would give other artists is try to get your taxes and stuff, because it's tough. Like, if you are swiping credit cards, you got to report that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So just that's my advice, and trust me, I'm learning this too as I go. So, Neuro Designer says EPCC Small Business Development Center is a resource. Thank you, Neuro Designer, for giving us that resource. So, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, I think these are all super super important ideas and issues that we need to address. And I've mentioned this before on the campaign, that I want us to, people talk about the brain drain all the time, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about that. Even that it implies that all the good brains have left, and I think a lot of good brains have remained here and have come back. So I find, as a brain, I feel like offended by that. But I think besides that, I do want us to retain people, artists here. Like, we should be your headquarters, and your work should be exported. Whether it's to the East Coast, the West Coast, the Mid Coast, our community, our voices, right, are not just El Paso voices. Like, because we are Latinx, whether you're Salvadorian, whether you're Puerto Rican, Mexicano, fifth generation Mexican American, but don't even think of yourself as that anymore, whatever, your voice is still of value to someone else in the country, in the world. And so why can't we somehow help you figure out how to navigate those markets, so that our industry becomes, or arts becomes part of our industry, and we're exporting work and not exporting you.
Right.
Because we all know that if you went to Washington State, you could probably make a lot more money, Jose. You could, I mean, we already love you. They already want you back. And so there's already interest in you, that you could probably make a very good living there. My thinking is, let's keep doing what you're doing, which is like keep you here, but export your work.
Yeah, it's interesting, that you say that, because I get a lot of feedback from, like, I have a business account for my Instagram, and I would give that advice to artists. Switch to a business account now, because it's going to give you statistics that you're not aware of. If you don't have a business account, it was really surprising to me to find out that a lot of my traffic comes from California. And I was telling my roommate, who's like a marketing professional, he's like, dude, like, move to California if you have to, but I don't want to. I want to stay here. You know what I mean? Like, I want to like live, and I don't necessarily want to become wealthy off of art. I mean, obviously, like we all have our measurements of success, but if I could just survive and pay my bills, I'd be a happy person, just off my art or my work as an educator or whatever, so yeah, I mean, it is interesting. But if we're going to talk about better business practices for artists, switch up to online sales, all that kind of stuff. I do have an online store, so Vero, we're kind of coming up on the hour again. It's gonna die down. So I'm wondering, should we reveal this piece of art? Yes? Okay. Let me go grab it real quickly, okay? So this is my contribution to the Vote Vero for Mayor El Paso. And I hope that it can be used, in different ways or whatever. And let me pull this up. I don't know. Can you see it? Pretty big. And we'll post it here on Instagram in a little bit, but
It's beautiful. Thank you, Jose.
for sure. Look at that. So vote Vero for mayor in Paso, Texas. So
Yes.
so this is a soft pastel piece. I did it a few weeks ago. I finished it about a week ago, and I've been very excited to show it to you. And it'll be hopefully on display at your headquarters, right? Hopefully. So yeah, and we're gonna be doing some prints, and the portion, like a portion of whatever we collect from the prints, will go directly to the campaign as well. So be on the lookout for all that kind of stuff. But like I said, I feel like this is a part of history, and I want to participate in history building. And I think we're living in such a time where um, you know we our call to action comes in different ways. Mine comes through art. So, and your Nero designer asked, "What are y'all doing for Pride?" Um, living my life as a free queer person. Yeah.
What are we doing for Pride? Is that a question for the campaign too?
Oh yeah, is it? Oh yeah, possibly. Yeah. So what is Vero for a mayor doing anything for Pride?
Um, yes. I mean, to me, like a lot of it's interesting. Different communities have asked me this, and I'm like, you tell me. Like, I don't want to write that platform, right? I want as an ally, I want you to write to tell me what you need. I want you to tell me what you want. We've had questions, for instance, because I do fair housing stuff. Like, can we try to change the local ordinance to protect, people who are LGBTQ's access to housing? Absolutely. Like, so for me, it's more of like, tell me what you need, and I can tell you what it is that we can, how we need to get there, how
Yeah.
I think we can get there,
Right.
through our city government.
Right.
And yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Awesome.
Because I
Yeah.
think that when we talk about economic development, a lot of these marginalized communities are a crucial component. How many friends did I have in high school who, thank God, I mean, some of them were suicidal. This is in the early 90s. But how many of them, thank God, survived
Hmm.
intact physically, but then left?
Hmm.
And some of them started to come back, but it's still like, hesitation because they're like, I don't know that I'm welcome.
Hmm.
Um, 25 years later, I don't even know if it's still a safe space for me. And so, yeah.
No, this is just for folks to maybe consider, is what it's like being an artist here in El Paso. Because in my opinion, and it's not to call anybody out or um, make much ado of something that may not even exist, but I feel that the artist community here is very uh, macho in a sense, like when I go to these different events, and I really feel like, do I say something? Do I have a voice here? And yeah, you know what I mean? So, and I feel that as I have communicated that through like my social media, through my art, that people are registering with that. Some folks are like, you know what? I feel that way too, when I'm trying to um, compete for funding or whatever, and so, I mean, I don't know. So Pitufo, so people are saying, so for Pride, I'm just gonna keep working on more art. I mean, we can't go outdoors now, so for Pride, no, I mean, so, but I would say, Mishki says, thank you for doing this, and the rainbow painted street sidewalks are cool from Pitufo. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I really appreciate the opportunity, Vero, to exchange with you. You have my endorsement as an artist, and I, how can people get involved before we, finish up? Like, how can they donate? Like all that kind of stuff.
Right. So right now our main portal is veroformayor.com. We don't have headquarters. If someone is interested in donating a space, we do have a space that we use, but it's not our own. It's not only for us. Also with the pandemic, it's sort of not become a priority to have a space for us to meet. But if you go to our website, veroformayor.com, sign up, reach out to us through our email. And what we've been doing a lot is events like this, and also having smaller events through Zoom. And they can be private or they can be public. But I think just conversations. We need to continue to have the conversations as I continue to shape my platforms and my policies. But if you want to get involved, like, if you're just like, I just want to buy a yard sign, you can buy a yard sign. You can look. I'm not gonna joke around. Like, we could lose. It's very plausible that I could lose. That isn't the. I want to win, and I'm fighting to win. But in El Paso, we have had local elections won and lost by 4 votes. 4 people, right, who failed to go vote. That's going to be razor thin, I think, here. And I think if I make it into a runoff, or if I win outright, it's still going to be really, really razor thin. And so don't take it for granted. Don't procrastinate. Start telling people about the platform, what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see us change, because we need that. And so, text your friends. Are you registered? If not, can you please get registered, and then check out Vero's campaign. Let's do an event for her together. Yes, of course, money is important, but money is not going to get me the win. What's going to get me the win is people actually taking the time to register, vote, and then get others to vote. And don't leave it to